Episode 51, Quitting.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Wake up, folks. The weekend is over. Time for play and time for relaxation has ended. It was an interesting weekend, let's put it that way, because I received a small, tiny bit of feedback on last Friday's exercise, where we had the topic of one's perspective is one's reality and how to kind of change your perspective in life and thereby enlightening your reality, which it resonated with a lot of people, but obviously I was not really clear enough on what I meant. So therefore, look forward to part 2 of that episode, where I'm going to try to kind of go into more depth and elaborate further on how that was meant. In that sense, let's close off episode 50 for now and welcome the new week with episode 51, which is about quitting. And that in itself, the word itself has a negative connotation in a sense, and it doesn't have to be that way. In that quitting can have significantly positive impact, a significantly positive impact on our life. And so that's what we're going to kind of try, or we're going to try to even or balance the scale in saying that, positive meanings or positive outcomes of quitting something, but there are also negative consequences. Of course, as always in life, pretty much there needs to be balance. And so the same applies for quitting. And why should quitting be an exception, if anything, right? So the topics that I've kind of drawn out to discuss today are quitting on a person in life. The second thing is quitting on a situation in your life. The third is quitting a relationship, which is probably the most difficult thing to do. Then we have quitting a job and quitting a career. And while they seem to be quite similar, they're anything but. And last but not least, we discuss quitting as a non-option. So when is quitting not an option to pull through? So shall we get started with quitting on a person in life? And I don't mean by that anything detrimental like death, but there are situations in life when you have to quit on a person, when that person has chosen to go down a road that you are not willing to follow. For instance, when they go into self-destruct mode through alcohol or drugs, and even in therapeutic psychotherapy, one of the theories or one of the pieces of advice counselors give family members, for instance, or friends of people who particularly go down the road of alcoholism is to let them be. And that's a very difficult decision because you think that these people need help more than any time in their life before. And some people will actually pick themselves up, right? And through the help will essentially grow into this relationship. But in a lot of cases, every amount of help you throw at them just feeds their, let's call it an egotistical road they're going down. And in that case, there's nothing you can do for them, because every hand that you offer them, every helping hand, is just going to feed their self-pity, because that's what alcohol actually does to a lot of us, is, drown in self-pity about, how everything else is responsible for them drinking, but not themselves, and in effect, their addiction, right? And in that case, and it's very difficult to let them go, there comes a time when they have to realize and reflect for themselves that what they're doing is shitty. Perhaps this relationship that they have is so important to them that once it's broken, they will essentially stop with their addiction. And maybe the bond in the relationship is much stronger than the addiction itself. And that will, in essence, lead them back to their friends, family, and loved ones. In some cases, it won't. But it's a very interesting situation, and a very difficult one, but the only one that will help a lot of people. Quitting on a situation in life is more simple. But there, boom, that's it. No, in fact, it's not. Quitting on a situation in life is where you have a life situation which you want to change, where you want to grow out of, where you want to go out of. Sorry for the crackling. That's the fireplace keeping me warm, actually. And that's where things become kind of difficult, because you are the master of your life, period. There's nobody who's going to lead your life for you. So at the end of the day, while you may be sharing decisions with your better half, or your loved one, or whatever you want to call them, or your family and friends, the decision and the consequences out of that will be yours to bear, period. Nobody's going to really take consequence, or take the consequence away from you, right? So that being said, growing out of a situation or moving out of a situation can, for instance, be if you are in your 9-to-5 life and you want to excel out of that because you feel stuck with your career. Perhaps you want to learn something different. Perhaps you've had an aspiration where you want to change your financial situation. So beside your 9-to-5, you start to hustle and a side business, and you want to quit with the situation in your life where, you live paycheck to paycheck, and you actually want to put some money on the side and, live a more luxurious life for whatever the reasons are. Those are yours to see and to dream of or to envision, right? And that's where you quit the current situation and you aspire to something different, right? And that's also, for a lot of people, a step out of their comfort zone, because they've become accustomed to the paycheck to paycheck living. They've adapted to that lifestyle, but it is essentially unnecessary, and they could be doing more for themselves in life. So I'm not talking about the Ferrari or the Patek Philippe watch hanging off their wrist or whatever it is at the end of the day that drives them, but about, getting access to more money to improve your life by, eating healthier. Because a consequence of, this paycheck to paycheck living is that that a lot of people really fall for, an unhealthy diet, and thereby really shortening their life and ruining the chances of, the longevity aspect of life. So that is an interesting thought to maintain, the paycheck to paycheck thing as something which you want to aspire out of. So that will be, for instance, in essence, or later on in a strategic sense, quitting your 9 to 5 job in favor of the stuff that you did with your side hustle. I discussed that in episode 40, the financial freedom exercise, where you can lay the tracks to kind of get out of a life like that. And that's really an interesting situation to consider when mentioning quitting on a situation in life. Now, quitting a relationship, that's very different. And I mean like this, marital thing, relationship. I don't mean between friends or anything. But I mean being together for, an X or Y amount of years. Maybe you got together too early in life. You developed differently. One of the two couldn't keep track in the development. They became comfortable in the situation they were. And the relationship just gets to a degree where it is terrible. And I mean terrible in a sense because you're just together because of, why, it's comfortable. Why should we quit? We've become accustomed to each other. But you're not really, you're not really helping each other grow, which I think is kind of like a very important or the most important aspect in a relationship. Plus, you can have the situation where the relationship, because of the lives being lived apart, gets difficult in that one partner, kind of tries to change the other partner. And this battle erupts where one partner will inevitably have to give in and thereby be turned around by 180 degrees and result in being a person which they are not, just as a favor for their partner, right? So you've got the guy who I don't know, is the dominant part of the household, or whatever you want to call it, is the leading part of the household, and he wants to convince his wife to pick up this new method of life that he's found in, I don't know, horseback riding or whatever. And so he pushes her into this hobby, and she does it because she loves him. But at the end of the day, she's not satisfied. The entire work that comes with it, whatever the situation, maybe horseback riding was a stupid example, but let's stick with that for the moment. So she changes because of him. She becomes unsatisfied because she's not herself anymore. And that leads down a downward spiral, or that initiates a downward spiral, which will, end up frustrating both of them. Because she gets, shoved down this downward spiral. He notices that she's becoming, more and more grouchy or pissy or whatever. And the relationship just deteriorates from there. So, it's very important to leave yourselves the liberty to develop alone, but to develop together. It's insanely difficult to mention otherwise. But bear with me here for 1 second. So, at that point, quitting a relationship because of life's circumstances that just change, maybe the better way to go. You can just go your separate ways and be friends, for instance, as bizarre as that may sound. But before shit actually hits the fan, just, say, hey, listen, I came here for a different reason. Things just changed significantly in our lives, and hey, let's be friends. As stupid as that may sound, but that's a situation where you can both go out with a straight face, where nobody's got to be, pissed off or whatever. You can be friends and, just stick that for the rest of your life. I've actually got a situation like that in my, I don't want to say inner circle, but one of my friends actually made that transition. And so the relationship kind of went apart, and they're still friends. They still talk to each other. They're still best friends, actually. And they actually talk about who they fuck, and they are. So they're very, very entrusted. So it's weird probably for the new partners to be kind of like the third wheel, or the third and fourth wheel. But hey, that's their thing to kind of go through. So yeah, quitting a relationship is an option sometimes. Actually, while you should be pulling through difficult times, but if these difficult times are kind of like a permanent situation, yeah, uh, nobody needs that. So the better thing maybe just to, like I said, go out with a straight face and say, okay, look, let's find someone else, let's be friends, and let's move on. Speaking of moving on, we have quitting a job, which for some people is more difficult than for others. And this is really interesting depending on what country you live in, because for a lot of countries, and especially generational thing, in Germany, it is even still quite normal to stick with a company that you trained at or that you started working at for the rest of your life. That's nothing unusual here. While living in the United States, as I did, I saw that it's very normal to come to work. You're fired, you search for a new job, you do your thing there. And changing a mindset of a person to that is quite difficult. So this goes out to all of the people who are, afraid of losing their job for whatever reason. How in the fuck do you know that around the corner may not be a much better job, a much more satisfactory job, a much more fun job? What kind of an arrogant motherfucker are you to be clinging in there, having your teeth in the leg of the company that you work for, and maybe there's a leg that tastes much better just around the corner, but you're never going to find it because you're not keeping your eyes open to things happening outside of your sphere. Yeah, it takes a lot of getting used to. It takes a lot of work to adapt to the new company and make new friends and colleagues and whatnot. But if you stick with the same thing for the rest of your life, burnout syndrome alarm, that's, I think, a reason for a lot of people to suffer from that is because they stick with the same company with the same task. They get promoted every now and again, get a little bit more money, and then they retire and they're like, shit, where'd my life go? I did the same fucking thing for ages. Raised a family, had food on the table. Yeah, have a house, but now I'm old. I can't take care of the garden anymore. Fuck. It's like this. It's a very difficult situation, of course, for me as someone who's lived, I don't know, so many lives and had so many career moves with no fucking strategic aspect whatsoever. It was like I grew into one situation, said, damn, then something happened. I transitioned into the next, and so on and so forth. So, very, very, very interesting shit just happens along the way. And if you grasp those opportunities as they fly by you, grab them by the throat and say, look, I'm going to suck you dry, bitch. It's like the most bizarre situation was when I started web designing. That time I started a company and didn't think that I need customers. Right away, that's like things you shouldn't do. It was kind of like this, hey, hold my beer, I'm going to start a company. But fun aside, that it was like I did a lot of great shit that was way ahead of its time, and then spoke at a conference about, what was it, search engine optimization in the Netherlands. And this guy I think he was from the Belgian police, walks up to me and says, you're so fucking good at explaining shit. And you've got such a broad horizon of knowledge, or broad treasure trove of knowledge. Why don't you become a consultant? And so I rode the train home and transitioned from actually doing the shit myself, the coding bit and everything, to consulting people and upselling them into stuff that they desperately needed, but they didn't know that they needed it. And then, having my code monkeys program the shit and roll it out, and, everybody was the happier. So long story short, that can be a very good step that you can actually take, is, quitting a job, looking for something else, and maybe you're quit on, I don't know, whatever it is, but see the opportunity rather than, oh my God, I'm losing my job. Nothing's forever, and that's really one thing that a lot of people don't really take well. Now, let's move on because they're quite similar. But hold on, I need to cough off my nicotine. Sorry. So next thing is quitting a career. And that's totally bizarre. And here's what I mean by that. When I was, 35, 36, I did my last contract and met my better half and said, I'm done, really. The working for money, I'm done with that. I don't need to anymore. And I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm not rich. But I can, use my time wisely into projects that I find fun and fulfilling. And I don't need to be, shat on by contractors because, they feel like they owe me, they own me. So, and I just said, okay, I'm done. I'm through. And so since then I've been, still advising governments and intelligence services and police agencies and whatever not in terms of my true passion, which has been, cyber crime, cyber terrorism, and cyber warfare and those kind of things. But anything that didn't really feel good, I just said, nah, look for someone else. And this was truly fulfilling and was very good. And what I'm trying to say here is that there comes a time when you should determine for yourself. It's a very difficult step, because you're a work animal more likely than not. So it's like you quit your career to live your life really without the distraction of work. And God damn it, is that fulfilling? When you actually get up in the morning when you want to, not because your alarm clock's ringing, because you've got a fucking conference call at 6 in, I don't know, and you don't have to be on a plane by 3 to see a client that you don't want to see, really. You're just in it for buying the next Rolex, and you're like, okay, why am I doing this? A lot of people don't reflect. And for me, that was like a very important, a few health issues came along, and I said, do I really want to, work until I'm 65? Work myself to death until I'm 65, die at 67 and have had nothing of my life. And so for me, what was it? It was 35, 36, something like that, where I said, okay, I'm done. Here's the fun bit is coming. And the treacherous bit is over. And it's very important if you come into this situation where you can actually quit your career in a very professional sense. Like I said, I still work as a freelancer, but I'm not in it for the money anymore. Well, yeah, of course I am. Don't get me wrong. I don't have time to spend for free. I do that at home enough, reading shit. But it gives you a lot of opportunities because you're not in it for the shits anymore, right? So you spend a lot of time, a lot of quality time, like right now in front of the fireplace, reading articles and getting a very much more deeper, is that a word? I don't know, understanding of the material that you're actually trying to convey to people, or, whatever it is. And you've got so much more time on your hand that a conventional professional that will do this while, I don't know, being on an airplane or fucking a hooker at a hotel, because he's got no relationship, because he's got no life. And at the end of the day, you're more valuable to a contractor than that person because, you're reliable, you're relaxed. You can keep a sane mind in difficult situations, and boom, there you are, more valuable than any one of these, big 5 companies that run in everywhere and ruin everything because they're totally coked up and, whatever. Long story short, quitting a career, that's that. You need to make peace with and for yourself when you come to a stage where, you can say, okay, I'm not rich, but I can survive decently. then it's up to you to say, okay, do I want this for the rest of my life, or do I want free time and occasionally take something with a profound amount of knowledge? Because you're still going to have your network, you're still going to have your name out there. It's still floating out there. So it's not like you're gone, right? People will remember you, and people will, still be connected on LinkedIn and say, hold on, I know somebody with that. I've spoken to someone. And so in that sense, I think it's, very good and very important that you ask yourself the question when you get to the stage where you can say, okay, I can quit now and never really have to worry about money again. I'm not going to be rich. I'm not going to be traveling. I'm not going to have my Ferrari. I'm not going to, but if you're comfortable with that, get GTFO, get the fuck out, and continue carry on work as a hired gun somewhere, occasionally charging obscene amounts of money because you're good. And that's a very important thing. You're better than anybody out there. But I'm repeating myself, which leads us to last but not least, when quitting is not an option. And this is where I think it gets totally bizarre, because none of the above, quitting is actually an option. It should be a method, a means of last resort, always, because there's always going to be situations or there's always going to be things you can do to change situations, period. And I stand by that. There's no real question to be asked. If you're confronted with a situation where you're thinking of quitting, there's a way out of it. It's just you haven't thought hard and long enough. And from my experience as a consultant, where you're inevitably and constantly in situations where you have to improvise, there's always things you can do to change the situation to your favor, to your advantage. And that's why quitting is not an option ever. It's a means of last resort. And the situation before you quit has to be very, very, very dire, intolerable for yourself, and or intolerable for your friends and family. And only then should you ever consider quitting. And I think that's where the negative connotation kind of derives from, is that a lot of people think that quitting is an option and yada, 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 but it's not. There's one thing that quits, and that's death, and death quits your life, if that's correct, ends your life. And that's the only thing when quitting is really a viable option. That being said, man, this was quite a philosophical episode. I never thought it would become, but I hope the point became clearer than the point I tried to make on Friday with, the perspective and the reality thing. And in that sense, feedback, criticism, anything goes to the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. If you want, it would be appreciated to share some love on Instagram and Twitter and Parler and Facebook and wherever. The links are on the website, theverybestpodcastintheworld.com. And I think we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for your attention. I'm looking forward to welcoming you again tomorrow. Have a successful day and a good night. If you have already had your successful day, just have a good night or a successful night or whatever you want to be, whatever you want it to be. And in that sense, I'm out, and we'll be contemplating great shit for tomorrow's show. Stay tuned. Peace out.